Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure that you're not seeing the slide presenter view. And so today I broadly hope that we can touch on some topics relating to community and resilience, hear from and learn from each other, and build resilience through community by being here together. First, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that I am currently on the land of the Duwamish and other Coast Salish peoples here in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. This land that touches the shared waters of all the tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Without their stewardship, I wouldn't have access to these places. So I want to honor the land itself and the people who are still here. And if you want to learn about the land that the indigenous peoples that might have been or are on your land, you can check out that website at the bottom there. So I want to start with some introductions, but what I'd like to do is offer or ask that we oh, this is tough. I'm not gonna be able to see it. Okay, I want to start with introductions. I'd like to ask that folks in the chat introduce yourself. Please share your name, your preferred pronouns, the community that you manage, and the location that you are. And then if you have the wherewithal, share the weather that your mental state is in today. So mine, and I can't really see the chat right now because my windows are covered with presenter view. But so I'm Jen Davison. I use she, her pronouns. My community is urban at UW. I'm in Seattle, Washington. My weather today is partly sunny, chance of showers. So I'll give wait a moment for people to be able to do that. And maybe Katie, are people entering their information? Good. I wish I could see it. I need 3 monitors. Okay, well, I'm really glad to be here. I'm so excited to see some people that I know and people that I don't know. I'm really grateful and honored to be able to have this conversation with you. So my background, I'm a scientist by training. My background is in resilience and community, and first studying the communities of small mammals in the desert Southwest, looking at community resilience in the context of climate change, land use, biodiversity. And as I was studying these multiple systems that are seemingly more and more in distress or even in failure, I found out pretty early in my science career that I needed to think about my own personal care, because the research itself was emotionally sometimes quite devastating. So for 10 years or longer now, I've been bringing up and then presenting on this topic of self-care for climate scientists, for science communicators, scientists in general, and those of us just on the front lines of so many of our unfolding socio-ecological challenges. And in this work, I've learned that transdisciplinary and community engaged research is really the only way to address these challenges. And that requires a lot of development and maintaining of resilience within oneself, as well as among us as communities. So after some years in science and science communication, I now direct a transdisciplinary research center called Urban at UW that looks at well-being, equity, and resilience within cities. In 2017, I was honored to join the inaugural Community Engagement Fellowship Program, which I see a few of our team here on the call today, which I'm super excited to see. And until then, I was doing community management work, but I didn't have the words for it. So it was an amazing and really powerful opportunity to learn about this emerging model of science community manager, something that I had embodied, but didn't know what this model is existing and being created. And so to find people who were dealing with the similar priorities, similar challenges, developing similar skill sets and in similar environments was a really powerful source of my own personal and professional resilience. So as part of the CEFP program, we were asked to present on a topic of importance to us relating to community management. And I at that time spoke on the topic of resilience and burnout and how we take care of ourselves. And since then, things have gotten even more interesting. So in the past few years, as online communities as well as in-person communities have grappled with increasing stress, polarization, and in many cases, violence, the need for personal resilience has skyrocketed as we continue to dive into this work and hold ourselves and our communities in order for them to do this work and move forward. So as our societal systems are experiencing unprecedented stress, and as the injustice of some of these systems are unveiled to more and more people, where community managers, particularly this year, are bearing outsized burdens in nurturing resilience and fostering justice for people and for our communities. And I want to recognize that, community is a key variable in resilience, right? Community, more and more science is showing that social connection is critical. And so this year alone, the need for resilience is much more in the forefront for all of us as we're thinking about the pandemic and all these other systems. Certainly more the case for those of us with one or more non-dominant or marginalized identities. And so there's this broader integrated call for personal resilience, community building, and social justice together. And I want to acknowledge that. In the talk that my continual exploration of these integrated topics, I lean not only on the scientific literature, but more and more wonderful books that are coming out and blogs and podcasts and all sorts of resources. And I'm looking forward to seeing what other folks put into the document, the resources that you lean on. But these are some of the ones that I've been leaning on this year when I think about resilience. And some of these will be referenced in my upcoming slides. Okay, so the main point is that you can't pour from an empty cup. And so I'm going to walk through three main topics here in our conversation. First of all, that managing science community managers, it's a unique stressor, as Lou has mentioned. It requires a host of skills, a ton of time, a lot of energy, and oftentimes not enough support. Secondly, that resilience is a non-value neutral feature of systems. And so while it's neither good nor bad, the implications are critical at every scale. And then we're going to dive into the scale of personal resilience. And we'll talk about evidence-based tools, skills, and practices that we can use to increase our personal resilience. And I know that each of us has a toolkit of these types of tools and skills. And so I look forward again to sharing those with you. All right, let's dive in. So community management, a unique stressor. First of all, we as science community managers are the hub of the wheel that is our community. It takes a lot of energy, right? We take the pulse of our community, we look after its health and resilience. We have a disproportionate role in cultural change in our community. So that's a lot of emotional labor. So not only are we trying to keep our community together and hold space, but we're also trying to look after things like addressing disruptive behaviors and promoting productive behaviors. We are the main point of contact in our community and oftentimes for our community. So we hear the good, the bad, the ugly, including problematic statements, urgent complaints. And really, science community managers in particular are under increased stress as science has been distorted, dismissed, or aligned by other forces and is at the same time being leaned on to solve the challenges that we're facing. And again, this is extra stress if we hold one or more marginalized identities. Second kind of aspect of the unique stressor of being a science community manager. It requires a ton of different skill sets, and we're constantly shifting gears. And if you want to learn more about the skills wheel here, the guidebook was just launched yesterday. The link is in the note document. But we rely on interpersonal skills, technical skills, and then a lot of logistical, administrative, program management skills, as well as communication and visioning. And it takes mental energy to shift. And we know that multitasking has been shown to actually lead to less productivity, but this is part of our job, right? And then we do a lot of work and we're usually operating over capacity. And like this iceberg, much of what we do is not immediately obvious. In fact, it's often by design that our work looks seamless or effortless. So it's often unrecognized or underappreciated. And we have to justify our role because of this, because it's an emerging profession that doesn't always get included in budgets. So this creates or exacerbates imposter syndrome and isolation, especially if we don't have a community of practice, which is why the CSCCE is such a valuable place. And again, this is exacerbated if we identify with one or more non-dominant or marginalized identities. And I want to acknowledge that the pandemic has increased the pressure on online community managers as we work to provide resources to our communities, make sure that people feel seen, heard, safe, and that they can interact in healthy ways, while they and we are all leaning more heavily into online spaces until we can be together in person again. So yeah, it's a lot. So let's step back and think about what is resilience from an engineering perspective. Resilience comes from the engineering fields, but it has been embraced in all different disciplines. So from an engineering or ecological perspective, resilience both requires stability and adaptability, the ability to maintain through change or to transform while maintaining some inherent qualities or functions or services as the environment shifts. So this is the definition at all scales, from the individual to the community to the institution. So sometimes we need stability, sometimes we need adaptability. And we can think about, when we think about resilience from a social perspective, this model here is obviously from the social perspective, not from an engineering perspective. We may be talking about the individual, the ball in that ball and cup model that we were just looking at, but there is clear and bidirectional flow of resilience and the ingredients in resilience between institutional scales, community scales, and personal scales. So if we're, for example, experiencing a lack of trust within the institution, we're going to feel that personally. So the resilience, therefore, is fractal. It exists at all levels, and it is emergent. So these terms from Adrienne Maree Brown's work, I find really helpful for thinking about what resilience looks like. And I also want to acknowledge that systems, again, resilience is neither bad nor good. If a system is holding something in place that's harmful, that resilience may need to be overcome. So, for example, systems that are harmful, systems of oppression that are harmful are also quite adaptive, as we've been seeing. And so we need to think about how we can transform that. Okay, zooming back down to the personal scale. Adrienne Maree Brown defines resilience as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Pretty straightforward. And so I'm going to lean on on the research that I've been delving into around the topic of resilience. The way that resilience shows up for people, we'll just talk about the characteristics of resilient people include this idea of an internal locus of control or self-efficacy. That we are resilient people tend to have strong self-reliance, are action-oriented, are able to set and achieve personal goals and use that as a way of building their own resilience. Resilient people tend to have a sense of meaningfulness, faith, a point to doing things. We are able to account for past experiences and we use those lessons to inform current and future challenges and how we show up there. We are able to view stress as a way to learn and grow, as an opportunity rather than a burden or an injury. Resilient people tend to be able to deploy humor, patience, tolerance, optimism as tools and skills, that they're skillful in using these to dissipate stress. Resilient people tend to be able to adapt to change and move forward, recognizing that change is constant and being able to use that in a productive way. Resilient people tend to maintain strong and diverse relationships, a diverse portfolio of community that you can turn to, and diversity and resilience are highly interrelated. And finally, resilient people are able to ask for help, feel comfortable and skilled in asking for help, knowing that you can get support in this idea of reciprocal care. I can't handle that. I can't even see the chat, but that's okay. At least I can see the people faces. Okay. So Is this being cut off for people? Ah, I'm sorry. Well, okay. This slide is meant to talk about what it feels like when you're not feeling resilient. So this is a definition. I'll read it since you can't see it. Definition of burnout. A syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It is characterized by three dimensions: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance, or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. And so we all know this feeling. This is what resilience, a lack of resilience, feels like when our cup is empty. And community management professionals, as Lou mentioned, feel this all the time because of the unique stressors of our job. So let's talk about what we can do about that. And I'm going to use the cup metaphor to think about how we increase our capacity for resilience. And so thinking about checking for leaks, filling up our cup, and then sizing it up, increasing our capacity to be resilient. All right, checking for leaks. First of all, I'm going to walk through a list of things that we can do to assess our perspective and check for leaks in our own ability to hold energy. First, we need to acknowledge what we're feeling. If we're blocked by shame or guilt or failure or denial, we're unable to take the critical steps of tending to our own personal well-being. Recognizing that change, by and large, includes loss, and change is constant, it's hard. And so we have to be able to do our own work to recognize our feelings in order to move forward. Second, contemplate a wider perspective. Did you know that there are 2 trillion galaxies in the universe? I go to this website regularly for this exact reason, to remind myself of the vastness and the complexity and the beauty of our world. It really helps me kind of take a wider view. But if this is too broad, try taking a moment to go back to the vision that you've created for your community, or consider why you're in this job. Do some macro thinking, block out the time to do some macro thinking and strategy, stepping away from those urgent, unimportant tasks that fill our inboxes, and take some time to zoom out. Examine your assumptions. So what story are you telling yourself about the work that you're doing? Do all of these things need to get done today? Do they have to be perfect? Does that email need to be sent right now? Is what you're doing really the best use of your time and your energy? Or is there another way? Acknowledge that you can't do it all. Taking a moment to examine your assumptions about where you're at. Checking your boundaries. I find I'm working with this a lot lately. So are you taking on responsibilities that aren't yours? Are there hard limits that we have are there hard limits in yourself that you haven't explicated to other people? And can you take steps to make those known? Are you getting your needs met? These are hard. I find this to be a hard one because I want to help everybody, but it's uncomfortable at first, but it's really important. Reframing uncertainty. So uncertainty, just like change, is a part of life. It's a fact of life. But if we can start to, and we are all dealing with an immense amount of uncertainty right now, and it increases our anxiety levels. So taking a moment to try to reframe that, seeing it from a different perspective, not as a threat, but as a natural part of life, and even as a gift or a good thing, just that mental reframing, even just temporarily, can lower the temperature and reduce the stress. Examine and assess your discomfort. So this one is another one that I'm working with a lot as well. I'm tired because I'm uncomfortable in a lot of professional spaces, but what does that comfort due to? Is it because I'm rightfully trying to create cultural change? Is it because larger parts of the organization are making it really uncomfortable for me to be in this space right now? So is this something I need to build my strength on? Is it a sore muscle, or is it an injury? Is it something I need to step away from? Taking time to look at the discomfort can help us separate our the sources of our energy depletion. And then finally, reminding ourselves of our agency. So this again is another way of checking for leaks in our cup. How can we reassess our perspective? We may not have control over circumstances, but we're far from powerless. So some things I like to do are create lists of things, small things that I need to get done or things I've already done, and then check them off. Small acts of resistance, small acts of resilience, small acts of empowerment can remind us of our own agency. Okay. Are we doing okay on time, Katie? Okay, great, thank you. So along with checking for leaks in our cup, we can start really just focus on bringing more energy to ourselves. Take time away. So these lists again are evidence-based, based in research. This is all backed by research. First of all, take some time away. Give your brain and your adrenal glands a break. We've all kind of experienced that, how important that is. Going outside is a research-backed activity for increasing your personal resilience. It's good for your blood pressure. It's good for your breathing. It's good for your brain. Reading, this engages the imaginative part of your brain. It reduces stress and it increases empathy and ethical thinking. Listening to music, singing really loud. This is good for your brain. Like, it's good. Go do some karaoke. Good quality and quantity of sleep, regular exercise, eating well. All of these are physically related to your ability to tolerate stress. And then community, as we know, right? Community is critically important. And the broader and the more diverse our communities, the higher degrees of personal well-being we can experience. And I know that we think about this from both our personal perspective as well as the communities that we manage. But right now I'm thinking about our own personal communities, our squads. How do we reach out? And then along with thinking about how we're losing energy and how we're gaining energy, we can grow our capacity for resilience. We can grow our capacity to withstand stress. Some of the practices and some of the skills that we can build, mindfulness and meditation, more and more research is showing the value of this as a practice for personal resilience. So you build up your muscle to remain present, which allows you to maintain perspective rather than spinning off into unhelpful stories that are likely riddled with false assumptions. And it allows you to deploy the tools that we're talking about without minimizing the risk of getting flooded and succumbing to burnout. Practices of gratitude, also science-based, to help increase your resilience to stress. And I really resonate with these because oftentimes we're taught that things like hope, joy, awe, or gratitude, they happen, but these are skills that we can develop. And these are practices that we can take on. And they're science-backed and linked to resilience to stress. And then practice asking for and receiving help. We're not in this alone. That's a false assumption. And this kind of asking for and giving and receiving help is linked to social connection and personal resilience. Okay, so what I didn't touch on here is how to increase the health or resilience of our community or our institution, or how to change it. Those are huge topics. There are lots of really wonderful groups who do study resilience, including the Greater Good Science Center at Berkeley is awesome. I can't wait to hear about other researchers and resources that you all have. But I want to mention again that we as community managers are leaders, and we're creating cultural change. There are many new ways of seeing leadership that defines it this way, but oftentimes we find ourselves in organizations that have embedded in them at least some, if not all, of the more traditional patriarchal leadership hierarchy policies, cultures, and infrastructure. So it's a very real reason why the work we do is often not acknowledged or resourced. So there is a need for a larger shift of leadership models in our society. So I'm going to end there.